At a cruel rich cowboy's ranch, she took the job nobody wanted. What she found changed everything. The truck rattled to a stop at the iron gates, and Claire Palmer felt her stomach twist. 3 crosses stood planted in the dirt just beyond the entrance, each bearing a name she didn't recognize. Fresh flowers lay at the base of one. She gripped the steering wheel tighter and reminded herself why she was here. Rent was 2 months overdue, her daughter needed medicine, and this job paid triple what anywhere else offered. There had to be a reason for that. The ranch spread before her like a small kingdom. Endless pastures rolled toward distant mountains, and the main house rose 3 stories high with white columns that seemed to mock the dusty landscape. Dozens of buildings dotted the property, from stables to bunkhouses to structures she couldn't identify. Workers moved between them like ants, heads down, never pausing. Claire drove through the gates and followed the winding road to the main house. A man stood waiting on the porch, tall and solid as an oak, with silver hair and a face carved from stone. He didn't smile as she parked and stepped out. "You're late," he said. Claire checked her watch. She was 4 minutes early. "I'm Claire Palmer. We spoke on the phone. I know who you are." He descended the steps slowly, each footfall deliberate. "I'm William Grant. This is my ranch. My rules. You follow them, you'll do fine. You don't, you leave. Clear?" "Clear." She met his gaze and refused to look away first. Something flickered in his eyes. Not respect, but acknowledgement. "Your references checked out. Single mother, nursing background, good with animals. That true?" "Yes, sir." "Don't call me sir. Call me Grant." He turned and started walking toward a large barn. "Come on, daylight's burning." The ranch hands they passed didn't look up. A woman sweeping the porch of one building kept her eyes fixed on the ground. The whole place felt wrong, like everyone was holding their breath. Grant pushed open the barn doors. The smell hit her first, sharp and medicinal. Then she saw them. Dozens of horses filled the stalls, but these weren't the healthy animals she'd expected. Some bore fresh wounds, others stood with bandaged legs. A gray mare in the corner had burns across her flank. "What happened to them?" Claire whispered. "That's what you're here to find out." Grant walked down the center aisle, his boots echoing on concrete. "Been losing horses for 3 months."
They get hurt in ways that don't make sense. Vet can't explain it.
Previous caretaker quit. One before that disappeared.
Claire's mouth went dry.
Disappeared? Left without notice. Didn't collect her final pay. Grant stopped at a stall holding the black stallion. The horse's eyes were wild, whites showing. Deep cuts marked his shoulders in parallel lines. This one came in last night. Found him in the south pasture at dawn. Something spooked the whole herd. She approached slowly, hand extended. The stallion's nostrils flared, but he didn't back away. Claire examined the cuts without touching them. They were too regular, too precise. Not from barbed wire or another animal. These were made by something sharp. A blade, maybe. Grant's expression didn't change. "That's what I thought. You're saying someone's doing this on purpose?" "I'm saying you're here to keep these animals alive and find out what's happening to them. Pays $3,000 a week. Room and board included. You report only to me." He headed for the door. "Bunkhouse is the 3rd building on the left. Get settled. Start work at 5 tomorrow morning. It's already 4 in the afternoon. What about tonight?" He paused in the doorway. "Tonight you stay in your room. Don't go walking around after dark. Don't talk to the other workers. And whatever you hear, you stay inside. Understood?" Claire looked at the injured horses, then back at Grant. Every instinct screamed at her to get back in her truck and drive away. But she thought of her daughter, of the eviction notice, of the empty refrigerator at home. "Understood." Grant nodded once and left. The barn fell silent except for the nervous shifting of hooves and the low breathing of frightened animals. Claire walked to the gray mare and gently touched her neck. A horse leaned into her palm, seeking comfort. "What's happening here?" she murmured. Outside, the sun began its descent. Shadows stretched across the ranch like grasping fingers. Claire heard voices in the distance, sharp and angry, though she couldn't make out words. Then silence fell so complete it felt suffocating. She left the barn and found the bunkhouse. Her room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a window facing the main house. As she unpacked her few belongings, she noticed the window had bars on the outside, not decorative ironwork. Real bars, sturdy and functional. Darkness came quickly. Claire lay on the bed, fully clothed, and listened. At first nothing. Then, around midnight, she heard it. Hoofbeats. Dozens of them, thundering past her building. She went to the window and peered out. Horses ran through the compound, riderless and terrified. They scattered in all directions, crashing into fences, calling out in distress. Claire pressed her face to the glass, trying to see what pursued them. The main house blazed with lights, but no one emerged. No one tried to stop the chaos. Then she saw him. A figure on horseback moving through the stampede like a shadow. He rode a massive black horse and held something in his hand that gleamed in the moonlight. As he passed beneath the security light, Claire caught a glimpse of his face. It was Grant, and he was smiling. Morning came too soon. Claire had barely slept, her mind replaying the scene from the night before. She'd watched Grant ride among the panicked horses for nearly an hour before they finally scattered into the darkness. When silence returned, she'd forced herself to lie back down, but sleep came in fragments filled with the sound of hoofbeats and frightened screams. At 5 sharp, she walked to the barn. The injured horses from yesterday looked worse. The black stallion with the cuts now had new wounds along his hindquarters. Fresh blood stained his coat. Claire's hands trembled as she gathered medical supplies. "You're punctual." Grant's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, looking exactly as he had the day before. No sign of exhaustion, no indication he'd been up half the night terrorizing his own animals. What happened last night? Claire kept her voice steady. Stampede. Happens sometimes. He walked to the stallion's stall. How's he looking? These injuries are new. Then fix them. Claire wanted to confront him, to demand answers about what she'd witnessed. But something in his expression stopped her. There was a challenge there, a test. He knew she'd seen something. He wanted to see what she'd do about it. She cleaned and dressed the stallion's wounds while Grant watched. The horse trembled under her touch but didn't fight. When she finished, Grant handed her a clipboard. Full inventory of every animal on this ranch. Horses, cattle, everything. You'll check them all daily. Any new injuries, you document them. Time, location, severity. You miss anything, you're done. That'll take hours. Then you better get started. He left her alone. Claire spent the morning moving from building to building, examining animals and taking notes. The cattle seemed healthy enough, though skittish, but the horses were another story. Nearly everyone showed signs of abuse. Cuts, burns, rope marks around their legs. Some wounds were weeks old, others fresh. Around noon, she found a young ranch hand mucking out stalls. He couldn't have been more than 20, with sandy hair and nervous eyes. When he saw her, he ducked his head and worked faster. "Hey," Claire said gently. "I'm Claire. What's your name?" He didn't look up. "Not supposed to talk. I just want to know who you are. Please, I need this job." His voice cracked. "Just leave me alone." Claire backed away. She tried talking to 3 more workers throughout the day. Each one refused to engage, some actually running from her. By evening, she understood. Whatever was happening here, everyone knew about it, and everyone was too terrified to speak. She returned to the main barn to feed the injured horses. As she filled water buckets, she noticed something odd. The stall doors had locks on the outside, heavy-duty padlocks, industrial strength. Why would you need to lock horses in? Admiring my security measures? Claire spun around. Grant stood there with another man, shorter and thick through the shoulders, with a cruel mouth and cold eyes. "This is my foreman, Carl Dixon," Grant said. "He runs the day-to-day operations. You need anything, you ask him." Carl looked her up and down slowly. "Heard you were asking questions today." "Just introducing myself to the staff. Staff don't want to be bothered. They got work to do." "You got work to do too. Focus on the animals, not the people." Grant watched this exchange with apparent amusement. Carl's right. The workers here value their privacy. Best to respect that. Claire forced herself to nod. Understood. Good girl." Carl's smile made her skin crawl. "See you around." They left together, their voices fading as they walked toward the main house. Claire waited until they were out of sight, then she did something reckless. She followed them. Staying in the shadows, she moved from building to building, keeping them in view. They crossed the compound to a structure set apart from the others, surrounded by a high fence topped with barbed wire. Carl unlocked the gate, and they went inside. Claire crept closer, heart hammering. Through gaps in the fence, she could see a smaller barn. Lights glowed inside. She heard voices, then something else. A horse's scream, sharp and agonized. She had to see. Moving along the fence line, she found a spot where the boards had warped, creating a narrow gap. She pressed her eye to it and looked inside. The barn's interior was set up like an arena. Horses stood chained along the walls, wild-eyed and trembling. In the center, Grant and Carl stood with 5 other men she didn't recognize. They were placing bets, passing money back and forth. Then one of them opened a stall and let out a young brown horse, barely more than a colt. They released it into the arena. The colt tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The men laughed and shouted. One of them picked up a long pole with something attached to the end. An electric prod. Claire's stomach turned. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. The man jabbed the colt with the prod. The animal screamed and kicked, trying to escape. The men laughed harder. They took turns shocking the horse, driving it around the arena while they cheered and drank. Grant stood back, watching with his arms crossed. He wasn't participating, but he wasn't stopping it either. This was his ranch, his operation. He was allowing this to happen. The torture went on for 15 minutes before they finally stopped. The colt stood in the center of the arena, sides heaving, covered in sweat and foam. One of the men walked up and kicked it hard in the ribs. The horse went down. "That's enough for tonight," Grant said. "Put it back in the south pasture. Make sure it can't be traced back here." Carl and another man dragged the colt away. The gathering broke up, men heading to their vehicles parked behind the barn. Claire backed away from the fence and ran. She made it to her bunkhouse and locked the door. Her whole body shook. She'd suspected abuse, but this was systematic torture. Entertainment for wealthy men who paid for the privilege of hurting defenseless animals. And she was trapped here. If she went to the police, they'd ask for evidence. These men clearly had power and money. Her word against theirs would mean nothing. Worse, if Grant found out she'd seen anything, she didn't know what he'd do. Claire paced her small room, trying to think. She needed proof. Videos, photographs, something concrete. But even more than that, she needed to understand the full scope of what was happening. How many animals? How often? Who else was involved? A knock on her door made her freeze. "Claire?" A woman's voice, soft and scared. "Please, I need to talk to you." A young woman stood there, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back and exhaustion carved into her face. She wore the same work clothes as the other ranch hands. "I'm Lucy Chen. I work in the feed storage." She glanced around nervously. "Can I come in? Please." "It's not safe out here." Claire led her inside and locked the door. Lucy immediately moved away from the window. "You saw something tonight, didn't you?" Lucy said. "I saw you near the training barn." "Training barn? Is that what you call it?" "That's what Grant calls it. The rest of us call it hell." Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to warn you. You seem like a good person. You should leave before it's too late." "Too late for what? Grant brings in new people every few months, usually women. He tells them they're here to care for the animals, to document the injuries. But really, he's testing them, seeing if they'll play along or if they'll cause trouble." Claire's blood ran cold. "What happens to the ones who cause trouble? Some leave on their own when they figure it out. The smart ones." Lucy's voice dropped to a whisper. "But others ask too many questions. Push too hard. Those are the ones who disappear. The cross is at the entrance." Lucy nodded. 3 women in the last year. Grant said they quit, but their families never heard from them again. Police investigated, but found nothing. Grant's got connections. Half the sheriff's department is on his payroll. Why are you still here then? Why don't you leave? Because he's got leverage on all of us. Me, I got arrested for theft 2 years ago. Grant made it go away, but he kept the evidence. If I leave or talk, he turns it over to the cops. She wiped her eyes. Everyone here, he's got something on them. We're all trapped. Claire sat on the bed, processing this. What does he want from me? Same thing he wanted from the others.
Wants you to help him.
Document the injuries for insurance claims. Create medical records that make it look like accidents. The animals get hurt in his training sessions, then he files claims and collects the money. But he needs a licensed caretaker to make the paperwork legitimate. And if I refuse? Lucy met her eyes. Then you become a problem. And Grant solves problems permanently. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, Claire heard footsteps passing by, then fading, the ranch settling into its uneasy night.
"There's more," Lucy said.
The men who come here, the ones who pay to hurt the animals, they're not just random rich people. They're politicians, judges, business owners, powerful men from all over the state. Grant films everything. He's got recordings of them torturing animals, breaking laws. That's his real business. Blackmail. He's blackmailing them? Or protecting them? Depends on what he needs. Some of them pay him to keep the videos hidden. Others do favors for him in exchange for silence. That's how he stays untouchable. Lucy stood up. I shouldn't be here this long. If anyone sees me with you, we're both in trouble. Wait. Claire grabbed her arm. Help me stop him. Together we could gather evidence, go to the FBI, or someone outside his influence. Lucy pulled away. I'm sorry. I can't. I've got a kid brother who depends on me. If something happens to me, he's got nobody. She moved to the door. Just leave, Claire. First chance you get, drive away and don't look back. It's not worth dying for. She slipped out into the darkness. Claire locked the door behind her and leaned against it. Her mind raced with everything she'd learned. This wasn't just animal abuse. It was organized crime, blackmail, possibly murder. She was in way over her head, but as she thought about those injured horses, about the colt screaming in the arena, something hardened inside her. These animals couldn't save themselves. Someone had to help them. And if everyone else was too scared or compromised, then it would have to be her. Claire went to her bag and pulled out her phone. No signal, just as she'd noticed when she arrived. Grant probably had a jammer somewhere on the property. But she had an old digital camera she'd brought to document the animal's injuries. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Tomorrow, she'd begin gathering evidence. Photos, videos, anything she could use. And she'd find a way to get a message to the outside world. There had to be someone who could help, someone beyond Grant's reach. She just had to survive long enough to make it happen. The next morning, Claire started her documentation with new eyes. Every injury she photographed, every wound she cleaned, she noted the patterns. The burns were always in clusters.
The cuts were too precise.
The rope marks circled legs in ways that suggested deliberate restraint, not accidental entanglement. She worked methodically through the stables, her camera hidden in her medical bag. When she was certain no one was watching, she'd take additional photos showing the full extent of the damage. By noon, she had over 100 images stored on the camera's memory card. Grant appeared while she was treating a mare with infected wounds on her back. Making progress? He asked. Slow going? A lot of these injuries are serious. Some will take weeks to heal properly. He ran his hand along the mare's flank and the horse flinched. That's fine. Take your time. Do it right. He paused. Carl tells me you're very thorough. Says you've been documenting everything carefully? Claire kept her expression neutral. That's what you asked for. It is, he studied her face. You settling in okay? I know the ranch can be overwhelming at first. I'm managing. Good, because I've got some additional work for you. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. Insurance forms. Need detailed reports on how each animal got injured. I'll need your signature as the attending medical professional. Claire opened the folder. The forms were already partially filled out. Every injury was attributed to natural causes or accidents. Kicked by another horse. Tangled in wire. Spooked and ran into a fence. All lies. This isn't accurate, she said carefully. It's what happened according to our best knowledge. You weren't here when these injuries occurred, so you're documenting based on the physical evidence in our reports. Standard procedure. But some of these wounds clearly aren't from accidents. Grant's expression hardened. Are you a veterinarian, Claire? No, but I have medical training and I can see when injuries don't match the explanation. You're being asked to document what you observe and what you've been told about how it happened. That's the job. He tapped the folder. Complete these by tomorrow. Put them on my desk in the main house. He walked away before she could respond. Claire looked down at the forms. This was it. The moment Lucy had warned her about sign the fraudulent documents and become complicit, or refuse and become a problem. She tucked the folder into her bag and continued working. By evening, she'd examined every horse on the property. 42 total, and 31 showed signs of deliberate abuse. The numbers were damning. As the sun set, Claire returned to her bunkhouse. She needed to hide the camera somewhere safe. If anyone searched her room and found the photos, she was finished. She looked around the small space. Under the mattress was too obvious. The closet had no good hiding spots. Then she noticed the heating vent near the floor. Using a screwdriver from her medical kit, she removed the vent cover. The duct beyond was narrow but accessible. She wrapped the camera in a plastic bag and pushed it deep inside, then replaced the cover. Not perfect, but better than nothing. A sound outside made her freeze. Footsteps on the porch, deliberate and heavy. Then a knock. Claire Palmer. "Open up." Carl's voice. Claire's heart raced, but she forced herself to walk calmly to the door and open it. The foreman stood there with 2 other men she recognized from the training barn. "Evening," Carl said, though his tone held no friendliness. "Got a minute? What do you need?" "Boss wants to make sure you understand your responsibilities here. Mind if we come in?" Every instinct screamed to say no, but refusing would raise suspicion. "Sure." The 3 men entered, filling the small space. Carl sat on her bed while the others remained standing, blocking the door. The message was clear. She was trapped. "You've been asking questions," Carl said, talking to the staff. "Poking around places you shouldn't be. I was just doing inventory like Grant asked. See, that's the thing. Grant asked you to check the animals, not interrogate the workers, not snoop around after dark." He stood up and moved closer. "Makes a person wonder what you're really doing here. I'm taking care of the horses. Are you?" He picked up her medical bag and dumped the contents on the bed. Bandages, medication, syringes scattered across the blanket. He sorted through them slowly. "See anything here that looks out of place, boys?" The other men shook their heads. Claire's pulse thundered in her ears. The camera was hidden, but if they started searching in earnest, they'd find it. Carl picked up the folder Grant had given her. "You finished these forms yet?" "Working on them." Grant doesn't like waiting. He tossed the folder back on the bed. "Let me give you some advice, Claire. This is a good job. Pays well. All you got to do is your work, mind your business, and don't ask questions. Simple, right?" "Right. But every now and then, we get someone who thinks they're special. Thinks they're going to be a hero or something." He leaned in close. "You know what happens to heroes around here?" Claire met his eyes.
"They get crosses at the entrance?" Silence. Then Carl smiled, cold and dangerous.
"Smart girl. Too smart for your own good, maybe. But smart." He gestured to the others. "Come on. I think we've made our point." They filed out. Carl paused in the doorway. "Finish those forms tonight. Have them on Grant's desk first thing tomorrow. And Claire? Next time I come to visit, it won't be so friendly." The door closed. Claire stood trembling in the empty room. She'd pushed too hard, shown too much spine. Now they were watching her closely. Any wrong move and she'd disappear like the others. But instead of fear, she felt anger rising. These men thought they were untouchable. They'd been operating with impunity for so long that they'd grown careless. Carl's threat had revealed something important. They were worried about her, which meant she had power they didn't want her to realize. Claire gathered the scattered medical supplies and repacked her bag. Then she sat down with the insurance forms. She could forge them tonight, give Grant what he wanted, and buy herself time, but that would make her complicit. It would give them leverage over her, unless she was smarter about it. She began filling out the forms exactly as Grant wanted. Accidental injuries, natural causes, standard explanations. But as she wrote, she made small deliberate errors, wrong dates that wouldn't match other records, descriptions that contradicted themselves, medical terms used incorrectly. Nothing obvious enough to catch on first reading, but enough to make the documents useless for insurance fraud. If these ever went to court, an expert would tear them apart in seconds. Grant would be the one in trouble, not her. She could claim she'd made honest mistakes, that she wasn't familiar with insurance documentation. It was a risk, but it was better than signing clean, fraudulent documents. She finished around midnight and placed the folder on her small desk. Tomorrow she'd deliver it as ordered. Tonight, she had other work to do. Claire waited until 2 a.m, then slipped out of her bunkhouse. The ranch was dark and quiet. She'd memorized the locations of security cameras during her daily rounds. Most covered the main buildings and the entrance. But there were blind spots, and she navigated them carefully. She made her way to the training barn. The gate was locked, but she'd expected that. Instead, she circled around to the back where the fence met a storage shed. By climbing on the shed's roof, she could get high enough to see over the fence into the barn's windows. The interior was dark, but emergency lighting provided enough illumination to make out details. She could see the chains on the walls, the marks on the floor where animals had fought and bled. On the far side, she noticed something she'd missed before, a door leading to what looked like an office. If Grant kept records, they'd be there. Videos, financial documents, names of the men who came here. Everything she'd need to expose him. But getting inside would be nearly impossible with the security and locks. She was about to climb down when lights blazed on inside the barn. Claire flattened herself against the shed roof, heart pounding. Through the window, she saw Grant enter with 3 men in expensive suits. They were laughing, drinks in hand. "Gentlemen, right this way," Grant's voice carried clearly. "Got a new one tonight. Young stallion, plenty of fight in him." The men gathered in the arena. One of them, a heavy-set man with silver hair, clapped Grant on the shoulder. "This better be good, William. I drove 3 hours. You won't be disappointed, Senator." Claire's mind raced. Lucy had said politicians were involved, but having confirmation was different. She wished she had a camera, a way to record this. Carl brought out a black stallion, barely 2 years old. The horse pulled against the lead rope, eyes rolling. They released him into the arena, and the entertainment began. Electric prods, whips, anything to make the animal panic and hurt itself trying to escape. Claire forced herself to watch, to remember every detail. The senator's face flushed with excitement. Another man, younger and wearing a county sheriff's badge on his belt, laughed as the stallion crashed into a wall. The third man just watched with cold calculation, like he was analyzing a business proposition. The torture lasted 30 minutes. When they finished, the stallion stood trembling and bleeding in the center of the arena. Grant led the men to the office, still visible through the windows. They sat around a desk while Grant poured more drinks. "Excellent as always," the senator said. "Now about that little problem we discussed." "Already handled," Grant replied. "The environmental report will be delayed another 6 months. Gives you plenty of time to push the development through." "And the investigator?" "Found some irregularities in her background. She'll be too busy defending herself to look into your land deal." Grant smiled. "Costs a bit extra, though." The senator pulled out a checkbook. "Whatever it takes." Claire watched money change hands. Documents were signed. Deals were made. This was bigger than animal abuse. Grant was running a full criminal enterprise, using the torture sessions to gather blackmail while facilitating corruption across the state. She needed to get this information out. But how? No phone signal, no internet access. She was miles from the nearest town, and everyone here was either complicit or too scared to help. The meeting broke up. Grant escorted the men to their vehicles. Claire climbed down from the shed and hurried back to her bunkhouse. Her mind worked frantically. There had to be a way. Then she remembered. The main house. Grant would have phone lines, internet, communication with the outside world. If she could get inside, access his computer or phone system, she could send out a call for help. It was risky beyond anything she'd attempted, but what choice did she have? Every day she delayed, more animals suffered. And if Carl's threats were real, her own time was running out. Claire lay in bed planning. She'd have one chance. Maybe tomorrow, during the day when Grant was busy with the ranch operations, or maybe during another late-night session when everyone was distracted. Either way, she had to try. Because the alternative was becoming another cross at the entrance, another woman who asked too many questions and paid the ultimate price. Claire delivered the insurance forms to the main house at dawn. A housekeeper answered the door, a thin woman with gray hair and tired eyes who barely looked at her. "On the desk in his study," the woman said, pointing down a hallway. The inside of the house was as opulent as the exterior suggested. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than Claire would make in a lifetime. She found the study and placed the folder on the massive oak desk. As she turned to leave, she paused. The desk had 3 computer monitors, a phone system with multiple lines. Filing cabinets lined one wall. This room contained everything she needed, but the housekeeper was right outside, and Grant could return at any moment. Not today, but soon. She returned to the barn and continued her work. The black stallion from last night was back in his stall, covered in fresh wounds. Claire cleaned and bandaged him. Whispering apologies the horse couldn't understand. His spirit seemed broken. He barely moved as she worked. "Settling in nicely, I see." Claire looked up to find a woman standing in the barn entrance. She was in her 50s, elegantly dressed with blonde hair and sharp features. Everything about her spoke of money and power. "I'm Victoria Grant, William's wife." She walked down the aisle, inspecting the horses with the casual interest of someone evaluating furniture. "How are you finding our little ranch?" "It's challenging work." "I imagine so." "All these poor injured animals." Victoria's tone was sympathetic, but her eyes were cold. "William has such a soft heart. Spends a fortune trying to care for them properly." Claire bit back a response. This woman knew exactly what was happening here. She had to. "I wanted to introduce myself and let you know that if you need anything at all, you can come to me." Victoria handed her a business card. "My private number." Sometimes the staff here can be a bit rough around the edges. It's good to have a woman's perspective. Thank you. Victoria smiled. We women have to stick together, don't we? Especially in a male-dominated environment like this. She paused. I understand you're a single mother. That must be difficult. Every alarm in Claire's mind went off. How did Victoria know about her daughter? Your employment file, Victoria said, as if reading her thoughts. William is very thorough with background checks. Your daughter is 6, correct, Emma? Claire's blood ran cold. The message was clear. They knew where her daughter was, who she lived with. This wasn't just a friendly introduction. It was a threat wrapped in pleasant conversation. Emma's fine. She's with her grandmother. Wonderful. Grandmothers are such treasures. Victoria's smile never wavered. Well, I won't keep you from your work. Just remember, if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume. Claire leaned against the stall door, her legs shaking. They weren't even being subtle anymore. The threat to her daughter was explicit. Do what they wanted, or Emma would be in danger. Claire pulled out her phone, forgetting there was no signal. She needed to contact Emma's grandmother, warn her somehow. But how? She was trapped on this ranch with no way to communicate with the outside world, unless she made one. That night, Claire waited until the ranch settled into darkness, then made her move. Instead of heading to the main house, she went to the vehicle garage. She'd seen ranch trucks coming and going throughout the day. Some of them had to have satellite phones or some way to communicate with suppliers and buyers. The garage was locked, but a window on the side was cracked open. Claire squeezed through and dropped inside. Half a dozen trucks and cars were parked in neat rows. She tried each one systematically, searching glove compartments and center consoles. The fourth truck yielded results.
A satellite phone tucked under the seat?
Claire's hand shook as she powered it on. The screen glowed to life. Signal was weak but present. She dialed Emma's grandmother. Hello? The familiar voice brought tears to Claire's eyes. Betty, it's me. Listen carefully. I don't have much time. Where are you? This number showed up as unknown. I need you to take Emma and leave town. Today. Right now. Why? I can't explain. Please, just trust me. Pack a bag and go. Stay with your sister in Nevada. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not neighbors, not friends, no one. You're scaring me? I know. I'm sorry. But it's important. I got involved with some dangerous people, and they might try to use Emma to get to me. You have to keep her safe. There was a long pause. Then... Okay. We'll leave within the hour. But Claire, what about you? I'll be fine. I just need to know Emma's protected. Call me when you get to your sister's. She gave Betty the satellite phone number. And Betty? I love you both. We love you too. Be careful. Claire hung up. At least Emma would be safe. Whatever happened next, her daughter wouldn't be used as leverage. She was about to return the phone when it rang. She stared at it, frozen. Who would be calling this number? She let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Carl, it's me. Got a problem with the shipment from Nevada. Border Patrol's doing random checks this week. We need to move it through the southern route instead. Call me back. Shipment? Border Patrol? This wasn't just about animal abuse and blackmail. Grant was smuggling something. But what? She pocketed the phone and climbed back through the window. She needed to get to that office in the training barn. If Grant was running multiple criminal operations, the evidence would be there. The next morning, Claire went through her usual routine, but her mind was elsewhere. She'd hidden the satellite phone in the heating vent with her camera. It would be her lifeline if things went wrong. Grant summoned her to the main house after lunch. The insurance forms you submitted, he said, spreading them across his desk. They're full of errors. Claire had been prepared for this. I'm sorry, insurance documentation isn't my specialty. I did my best. Your best? He picked up one form. You've got the wrong date here. This injury description contradicts this medical term. And this section makes no sense at all. I can redo them. No, you can't. He stood up and walked around the desk. Because I think you did this on purpose. I think you're trying to sabotage me. That's not true. Isn't it? He was close now, looming over her. You're a smart woman, Claire. Smart enough to know exactly what's happening here. Smart enough to know that these forms need to be perfect for my insurance claims to go through, and smart enough to deliberately make them useless. Claire met his eyes. If you think I'm sabotaging you, why not just fire me? Because I want to know who you're working for. His voice was soft, dangerous. Who sent you here? The FBI? A rival organization? Animal rights group? Nobody sent me. I needed the money. Then why the games? Why the subtle defiance? He grabbed her arm, his grip painfully tight. I've been patient with you, given you chances, but my patience is running out. The study door opened. Carl entered with 2 of his men. We got a situation, Carl said. One of the vehicles is missing a satellite phone. Grant's eyes never left Claire's face. Is that so? Found the garage window forced open? Phone was in truck number 4. Search a room, Grant ordered. Search everywhere. Find that phone. The men left. Grant released Claire's arm but blocked the door. You made a mistake, he said. A big one. Now we're going to find out exactly what you've been up to, and depending on what we find, we'll decide what to do with you. Claire's mind raced. They'd find the phone and the camera. All her evidence, all her leverage, gone. She had maybe 15 minutes before they discovered everything. I used the phone to call my daughter's grandmother, she said. That's all. I was worried about Emma. Then you won't mind if we check the call history. Check it. You'll see I'm telling the truth. Grant studied her. You know what I think? I think you're stalling, trying to figure out your next move. He pulled out his own phone and made a call. Betty Johnson, address 432 Oak Street, apartment 2B. Send someone. Now. Claire's blood turned to ice. Don't. Please. She has nothing to do with this. Then cooperate. Tell me everything. Who you've contacted, what you've told them, what evidence you have. Tell me now, and I'll call off my people. This was it. The moment Claire had been trying to avoid. If she told the truth, Grant would destroy all evidence and probably kill her. If she lied, Emma and Betty were in danger. I'll tell you, she said. But first, call them off. I need to know Emma's safe. Grant smiled. You're not in a position to negotiate. Then you won't get what you want. They stared at each other. Grant's phone rang. He answered it, listened, then frowned. What do you mean they're not there? Claire felt a surge of hope. Betty had listened. They'd already left. Find them, Grant barked into the phone. He turned back to Claire. Where did they go? Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find them. His hand shot out and grabbed her throat. Not squeezing, just holding, a promise of violence. This isn't a game. I know. Claire's voice was steady despite her fear. And I know you're going to kill me. But before you do, you should know something. I documented everything. Photos, videos, dates, names. I know about the senator, the sheriff, the blackmail operation. I know about the smuggling. And if anything happens to me or my family, all of it goes public. It was a bluff. She had photos but no videos, limited information about the smuggling. But Grant didn't know that. His eyes narrowed. You're lying. Check my room. You'll find the camera. See the evidence for yourself. Grant released her and pulled out his phone again. Carl. The camera. Find it and bring it to me. They waited in tense silence. Claire's heart pounded. This was the gamble. Grant would find the camera and see she had documentation, but would it be enough to keep her alive? Or would he just kill her and destroy the evidence? Carl returned 10 minutes later with the camera. Grant plugged it into his computer and began scrolling through the images. His expression darkened with each photo. Impressive, he finally said. You've been thorough. But I noticed something missing. No photos of our special events. No pictures of our guests, just injured animals. That's just what I've gathered so far. In 3 days? Grant shook his head. No. This is all you have, which means you're bluffing about the rest. Carl pulled a gun from his jacket. Claire fought panic. Kill me and you'll never know who else has copies of these photos. You'll never know if I sent them to someone, stored them online, left them with a lawyer to be released if I disappear. You didn't have internet access. I had that satellite phone for hours before you noticed it missing. Plenty of time to make calls, send emails, if I could find a signal. Grant was silent, calculating. Finally, he said, Carl, take her to the training barn. Lock her in the office. We'll deal with this tonight after our guests leave. The guests are still coming? Carl asked. Of course. Business as usual. Grant looked at Claire. You're going to have a front row seat. You'll watch what we do, and then we'll see if you still want to play games. Carl grabbed Claire's arm and dragged her out. There was no point. She'd bought herself a few hours at most, but maybe that would be enough. They crossed the compound to the training barn. Carl unlocked the gate and pulled her inside. The office was exactly where she'd seen it from outside, a small room with a desk, filing cabinets, and a window overlooking the arena. "Make yourself comfortable," Carl said, shoving her into a chair. He zip-tied her hands to the armrests. "Show starts in about an hour. Hope you enjoy it." He left, locking the door behind him. Claire tested the zip ties. Tight, but not impossible. She'd need something sharp to cut through them. She looked around the office. The desk had drawers, one of them slightly open. Inside, she could see papers, pens, office supplies, maybe scissors or a letter opener. But with her hands tied, she couldn't reach it. The window. Claire stood awkwardly, the chair attached to her hands, and examined it. Single-pane glass, old-fashioned latch. It was locked, but if she could break the glass, she might be able to call for help. Except there was no one to call. No one within miles who wasn't on Grant's payroll. Still, breaking the window would draw attention. Maybe that's all she needed. A distraction, a moment of chaos she could use to escape. Claire positioned herself and kicked the window hard. The glass cracked but didn't shatter.
She kicked it in.
This time it broke, fragments scattering onto the arena floor below. Alarms blared. Carl came running. "What the hell are you doing?" He burst into the office. "Getting some fresh air," Claire said. He backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded through her jaw. "Sit down and shut up. You try anything else, I won't wait for Grant's permission." He left again, slamming the door. Claire tasted blood, but through the broken window, she'd seen something. A ventilation duct ran along the wall just outside, leading up to the roof. If she could get through the window, she might be able to climb it. It was desperate and probably impossible, with her hands tied. But it was better than sitting here waiting to die. Part 5. The guests began arriving at dusk. Claire watched from the broken window as expensive vehicles pulled up to the training barn. Men in suits emerged, laughing and talking. She recognized the senator from the night before. The sheriff was there too, along with 4 others she didn't know. Grant greeted them warmly, shaking hands and playing the perfect host. They entered the barn, and Claire heard their voices echo up to the office. "William, this better be worth the trip," someone said. "Trust me, gentlemen. Tonight's event will be memorable." They gathered in the arena below. Carl brought out drinks while another man set up chairs. This was routine for them, Claire realized. They'd done this dozens, maybe hundreds of times. A casual social gathering built around animal torture. The first horse was led out, a chestnut mare, young and terrified. The moment she entered the arena, Claire saw her fate. The men circled her with prods and whips, taking turns making her run, making her bleed. Claire turned away, unable to watch. She focused instead on the zip ties holding her wrists. Using her teeth, she managed to drag a pen from the desk drawer. It wasn't sharp enough to cut plastic, but the metal clip might work. She bent the clip until it broke free, creating a thin piece of metal. Working by feel, she wedged it into the zip tie mechanism and twisted. The plastic cut into her wrists as she worked, drawing blood. But slowly, agonizingly, the tie loosened. Below, the men's laughter grew louder. The mare's screams pierced the night. Claire blocked it out and kept working. The first zip tie snapped free. She quickly freed her other hand and stood rubbing feeling back into her wrists. Now came the hard part. Getting out of this office, past Carl and his men, and off this ranch. She looked at the broken window. The ventilation duct was her best option. It was a 15-foot drop to the arena floor, but the duct might hold her weight if she was careful. Claire climbed through the window frame, careful of broken glass. The duct was old metal, corroded in places. She tested it with her weight. It groaned but held. Moving slowly, she began climbing down using the wall brackets for handholds. She was halfway down when a bracket pulled free. Claire slipped, barely catching herself on the duct. It bent under her weight with a loud screech. "Someone's on the roof!" one of the men shouted. Claire dropped the rest of the way, hitting the arena floor hard. Pain shot through her ankle, but adrenaline kept her moving. She ran for the exit as Carl and 2 others came after her. The gate was locked. Claire vaulted over a fence and into the pasture beyond. Behind her, men shouted and flashlights swept the darkness. She ran blindly, her injured ankle screaming with each step. A truck engine roared to life. Headlights swept across the field, catching her in their glare. Claire changed direction, heading for a line of trees in the distance. If she could reach the forest, she might lose them in the darkness. Something whistled past her head. Gunshot. They were actually shooting at her. Claire zigzagged, making herself a harder target. Another shot kicked up dirt near her feet. The trees were so close, maybe 50 yards. Then her ankle gave out. She went down hard, rolling through the grass. Before she could get up, hands grabbed her. Carl hauled her to her feet. Stupid move, really stupid. He dragged her back to the barn. The guests had scattered, clearly unhappy about the disruption. Grant stood in the center of the arena, his face a mask of cold fury. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption," he said. "Please help yourselves to the bar while I handle this." Most of the men left, heading to their vehicles. But the senator and sheriff remained, along with one other man Claire didn't recognize. "William, this is unacceptable," the senator said. "We can't have witnesses. You assured us this operation was secure." "It is secure. This is just one employee who got nosy. I'll deal with her." "The same way you dealt with the others?" the sheriff asked. "How many bodies are buried on this property now? 4? 5? Eventually someone's going to notice the pattern." Grant's jaw tightened. "There won't be a pattern. This one will be different. An accident. She'll drive off the property and her brakes will fail on the mountain road. Clean and untraceable. Not tonight you won't. Not after this chaos." The third man stepped forward. He was older, with silver hair and cold eyes that assessed Claire like she was a problem to be solved. "We need a different approach. I'm open to suggestions, Senator Brooks." "Senator Brooks?" "If she lived through this, that information might matter." "She claims to have evidence," Brooks said. "Photos, possibly copies stored somewhere safe. If we kill her and that evidence surfaces, it could destroy all of us. We need to know what she has and where it is." Grant looked at Claire. "You hear that? Tell us what we want to know and you might walk out of here. You'll kill me anyway." "Maybe. But if you cooperate, it'll be quick and painless. If you don't, well..." He gestured to the arena. "We've got all night and plenty of experience making things suffer." Claire's mind raced. She had to stall, had to find an opening. "The evidence is with a lawyer in Denver. If I don't check in every 72 hours, he goes public with everything." "Which lawyer?" She made up a name. "Richard Martinez. He specializes in whistleblower cases." Brooks pulled out his phone and made a call. After a brief conversation, he shook his head. "No Richard Martinez in Denver practices whistleblower law. Try again." "Maybe I got the city wrong. Could have been Boulder." Grant nodded to Carl, who moved toward her with the electric prod. Last chance to tell the truth. The prod touched her side. Electricity coursed through Claire's body. Every muscle seized. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. It felt like forever, but was probably only seconds. When Carl pulled away, she collapsed. "That was setting 3, Carl said. "Goes up to 10. Want to see what that feels like?" Claire couldn't speak. Her whole body shook. "I don't think she has any evidence stored away," Brooks said. "I think she's bluffing. Kill her tonight and be done with it." "Wait." The sheriff spoke up for the first time. "There's another option. One that benefits all of us." Grant raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening. We don't kill her."
We recruit her. The sheriff knelt beside Claire.
"Think about it. She's smart, resourceful, has medical training. She could be useful. And if we have leverage over her, she'll never talk." "What leverage?" Grant asked. "Her daughter. We find the kid and the grandmother. Keep them somewhere safe but accessible. Claire behaves, they stay safe. She causes trouble, they disappear. Simple." Claire found her voice. "No, I'll never work for you." "You don't have a choice," the sheriff said. "It's this or death. And if you choose death, we'll find your family anyway. At least this way you get to stay alive to protect them." Grant considered this. "It's risky. How do we know she won't turn on us?" "Because she's a mother. Mothers do anything to protect their children." The sheriff looked at Claire. "Isn't that right?" Claire wanted to spit in his face, to tell him to go to hell. But he was right. If keeping Emma safe meant playing along, she'd do it. She'd pretend to cooperate while looking for another chance to escape. "Fine," she whispered. "What was that?" Grant leaned closer. "I said fine. I'll work for you. Just don't hurt my family." The men exchanged looks. Brooks nodded slowly. "It could work. She documents the injuries for insurance fraud, signs whatever we need. And she keeps her mouth shut because her daughter's life depends on it. Plus," the sheriff added, "having someone with legitimate medical credentials gives us cover. If anyone ever investigates, we've got proper documentation showing we were trying to care for these animals." Grant helped Claire to her feet. Here's how this works. You do exactly what we tell you. No questions, no hesitation. You falsify records, you help us with insurance claims, you make this operation look legitimate. In exchange, your daughter stays safe. But if you ever try to run, if you ever contact the authorities, if you so much as look at us wrong, she dies. Understand? Claire nodded, defeat heavy in her chest. Good. Carl, take her to her room. She starts work again tomorrow. Grant turned to the others. Gentlemen, my apologies again for tonight's disruption. The next session will be much smoother. Carl walked Claire back to her bunkhouse. Her ankle throbbed and her whole body ached from the electric shock. She could barely stand. Boss is going soft, Carl muttered. Should have just killed you and been done with it. Why didn't you? Claire asked. Not my call. But between you and me, this arrangement won't last. You'll mess up eventually, and when you do, I'll be the one to handle you. He shoved her through the door. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. He left her alone. Claire collapsed on the bed, everything hurting. She'd failed. Failed to gather enough evidence, failed to escape, failed to stop these monsters. And now she was trapped worse than before, forced to help them in order to keep Emma safe. But as she lay there in the darkness, something shifted inside her. Yes, she'd failed tonight. But she was still alive, still inside their operation. And now she knew exactly who was involved and what they were doing. The sheriff, the senators, Grant, and his whole crew. They thought they'd won, thought they'd broken her. But they'd made a mistake. They'd let her live. And as long as she was breathing, she could still fight back. It would take time. She'd have to be patient, earn their trust while secretly gathering evidence. She'd need to be smarter, more careful than before, but she would find a way to stop them. For the horses who suffered, for the women who disappeared. For Emma, who deserved to grow up in a world where men like this faced justice. Claire closed her eyes, already planning her next move. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. 3 months later, Claire walked into the training barn carrying her medical bag. She'd learned to move through this place with her head down, speaking only when spoken to. She documented countless fraudulent insurance claims and watched more torture sessions than she could count. But she'd also been patient, and patient people eventually find opportunities. Tonight's session had been canceled. One of the senators couldn't make it, and Grant preferred full attendance. The barn was empty except for the horses. Claire had been waiting for this. She pulled out the new smartphone she'd purchased during a rare trip to town for supplies. It had taken her 2 months to convince Grant to let her go, and even then, Carl had accompanied her. But she'd managed to slip away for 10 minutes, enough time to buy a phone and hide it. She opened the office door. Over the past 3 months, she'd learned the locks, memorized the alarm codes, figured out the security camera blind spots. Grant trusted her now, or at least trusted that the threat to Emma kept her compliant. What he didn't know was that Betty and Emma were safely hidden with federal marshals. Claire had managed to contact the FBI 6 weeks ago, using a burner phone she'd found in Carl's truck. It had taken time to convince them she was legitimate, but the photos on her camera had helped. Now they were building a case. Claire booted up Grant's computer. She knew his password from watching him type it. The files were all there, videos of the torture sessions, financial records showing the blackmail payments, communications with smugglers about drug shipments crossing the border, hidden in horse trailers. She plugged in a USB drive and began copying everything. The door opened behind her. Claire spun around, heart-stopping. But it wasn't Grant or Carl. It was Lucy. "I saw you come in here," Lucy whispered. "What are you doing?" For a moment, Claire considered lying. Then she saw something in Lucy's eyes. Hope. Gathering evidence. "The FBI is coming tomorrow. All of this ends."
Lucy's hands trembled.
"Really? You're not just saying that. It's real. They have my daughter and grandmother in protective custody. They're building cases against Grant, Brooks, the sheriff, everyone involved." Tears streamed down Lucy's face. "I want to help. Please. I can't keep living like this." Claire made a decision. The filing cabinet against the wall. Third drawer has paper files documenting all the guests who visited. Names, dates, amounts paid. Get them. They worked together, copying files and gathering documents. 20 minutes passed, then 30. "We need to go," Claire said. "If anyone checks the cameras, they'll see we're missing." They left the office, locking it behind them. The barn was still empty. Claire walked Lucy back to her bunkhouse. "Tomorrow morning, stay in your room no matter what you hear," Claire said. "The FBI will secure the property and make sure everyone's safe, but there might be gunfire if Grant's men resist." Lucy nodded. Thank you for not giving up, for fighting when the rest of us were too scared. You were never too scared. You were surviving. There's no shame in that. They parted ways. Claire returned to her own room and hid the USB drive with her other evidence.
Tomorrow is there it is.
Grant and his associates would face justice. The animals would be rescued and rehabilitated. She thought about those crosses at the entrance, the women who hadn't made it. Their names were on the USB drive too, along with evidence of how they'd died. They would finally have justice. Claire lay in bed listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into night. For the first time in months, she felt something close to peace. Tomorrow would be dangerous. Grant wouldn't go down without a fight. But she was ready. The sun rose on what would be Grant's last day of freedom. Claire was already awake, watching from her window as FBI vehicles surrounded the property. They'd come in quietly just before dawn, blocking all exits. An agent's voice boomed through a megaphone. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Everyone on the property, exit your buildings with your hands visible. This property is now under federal jurisdiction. Claire stepped outside. Other workers emerged from their buildings, confused and frightened. Lucy caught her eye and smiled. Grant came out of the main house, Victoria beside him. He looked calm, almost amused. Then he saw the number of agents, saw the evidence boxes they carried, and his expression changed. On the ground! Now. Agents swarmed him. Grant went down hard, hands cuffed behind his back. Victoria screamed as they took her too. Carl tried to run, but was tackled within 10 feet. All across the property, Grant's men were arrested. The lead agent, a woman named Morrison, approached Claire. Miss, you're safe now. We have everything we need to put these people away for life. Claire nodded, unable to speak. It was over. Really over. They found the graves later that morning. 3 bodies buried in the pasture beyond the training barn, the women whose crosses stood at the entrance. Forensics confirmed they'd been murdered. Claire gave her full statement, providing context for the evidence she'd gathered. Lucy and several other workers testified too, their voices finally free. Grant, Victoria, Carl, Senator Brooks, and 17 others were arrested. The charges included animal cruelty, racketeering, blackmail, drug trafficking, and multiple counts of murder. The trials would take years, but the evidence was overwhelming. The horses were transferred to rescue facilities. Claire volunteered at the sanctuary that took most of them, helping rehabilitate the animals she'd cared for during her time on the ranch. The black stallion with the cuts eventually recovered, though he never fully lost his fear of humans. 6 months after the arrests, Claire sat in a small apartment in Denver with Emma. They'd started over with new names, new lives. The FBI had offered witness protection, but Claire declined. She'd spent enough time hiding and afraid. Emma played with her toys while Claire finished her coffee. There was a knock at the door. She tensed, old instincts kicking in, then forced herself to relax. Grant was in jail awaiting trial. His associates were scattered or imprisoned. She was safe. She opened the door to find Lucy standing there. "Hope I'm not intruding," Lucy said. "I was in town and thought I'd stop by." "Not at all." "Come in." They sat together, 2 women who'd survived hell and come out the other side. They talked about their new jobs, their therapy, their slow recovery. Neither pretended it was easy. Nightmares still came. Loud noises still made them flinch. But they were free, and the men who'd tormented them would spend the rest of their lives in prison. "I've been thinking about the others," Lucy said quietly. "The women who didn't make it. Do you think they'd be proud of us for stopping Grant?" Claire thought about the crosses, now removed and replaced with proper grave markers. 3 women whose courage to ask questions had cost them everything. "I think they'd want us to live," Claire said. "Really live. Not just survive, but thrive. Build good lives, be happy. That's the best way to honor them." Lucy smiled. "Then that's what we'll do." As the sun set over Denver, Claire watched Emma play and felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Not just for survival, but for an actual future. A good one, built on truth instead of fear. She'd taken the job nobody wanted and found a nightmare. But she'd also found strength she didn't know she possessed. And in the end, she'd changed everything. Not just for herself, but for all the victims who came before and all the animals who would never suffer at Grant's hands again. That was worth celebrating. Worth remembering. Worth everything she'd endured to make it happen.